Hi, this is Lloyd Long from L&M Gardens, and we want to thank you for coming onto our website today. One of our goals at L&M Gardens is not only to sell you a high quality plant, but we also want you to be able to know how to take care of them. And we don't want you to feel stressed out about it. We want you to do it as if it's a normal routine in your life. So today we want to talk about how do you water your plants? How do you take care of them? And how do you fertilize them? One of the big mistakes I think that people make when they water is that they don't get a consistency when they do it. In other words, find a time in the day where you can get a routine going and you can do the same type of watering process every day. For me, that's in the morning, first thing in the morning. And we recommend you do it first thing in the morning because if a plant's going to dry out, it's going to dry out during that day, and at nighttime it may be too late to water it. So if you can water in the morning and you can get a consistency in the time you water daily, that's going to help maintain your plants a lot better. One of the other things that we find that makes a big difference in watering is how much sun does it get. These Rieger begonias right here are in full shade, and they're going to take a lot less water than, say, a geranium that I have out in full sun. Let's take a look at one of those. Now we're looking at an ivy geranium that has vinca vine coming out of it. This plant right here is in full sun all day. Obviously this is going to take a lot more water than that. I have to water this one daily, usually no matter what. So the requirements for this are going to be a lot different from the one back there in the full shade. One of the ways you can check to see if your plant needs water is lift up the plant material, look down in there. If it looks dry, more than likely it needs water. If you can't tell by looking, take your finger, stick it down into the soil and bring it out and see if the soil is damp to your touch. If it is, then you don't need water. But if it's dry and it brushes off real easily, then you need to water your plants. Another thing that you need to look for in your plants is, are they curled up? Do they look like they're not in a good healthy state? A lot of times that's their warning system to you, telling you, hey, I'm dry, and they curl up or they wilt. Okay, so we've talked about getting a consistency in the time of the day that you water. We've also talked about you got to know how much sun each plant is getting. Different sides of the house will get different amounts of sun, which mean different amount of water. So make sure you know those things. You don't have to have a degree in plants to know these things. It's just knowing your house and knowing where your plants are. We're going to show you kind of how we would water, how I water here at my place. A lot of people would say, well, just pour water all over the top. I don't recommend doing that. A lot of times what you'll do is you will knock your blooms off. So we've already been into our plant like we showed you earlier to kind of see what's going on in there. You know, we felt the soil and we've looked. I suggest you water in the same way. So you can take any kind of watering can. I just use a $2 watering can. It doesn't have to be expensive. Get the nozzle down in here where you're going down into the roots, and don't just stay in one spot. Hit one side of the plant, move it around, go on over to the other side, because sometimes when you water that way, you only water one side of the pot. If it's a big pot, you may only water one side, and there's like 5 different plants in this basket. So one side may not get any water at all, and you'll have a basket that's dying on one side and it's doing really well on the other. So make sure you go clear around your plant and water inside like that. And if it's really dry, give it a good drink. You can kind of tell when you pick it up if you've given it a good drink. Plus water will sometimes run out of the bottom of them. So make sure that you give it a good drink if it needs it. One of the big mistakes that we have too is I think people get in the habit of watering every day whether a plant needs it or not. You know, we talked about the different amounts of sun. The ones that are in full sun, they get water every day. I have some that are in full shade. They may get watered every 4 days. I have some like right here on this patio that get sun for 3 hours a day. They may get water every other day. It's knowing your plants, knowing how much sun, again, that they get. So another thing you want to do too is on cloudy days, don't overwater. The tendency is to come out and pour too much water on. Just water them enough to keep them alive and keep them going well. When you buy your plants, especially from L&M Gardens, they have a time release or a slow release fertilizer in them, but eventually that runs out, and that's what feeds that plant. So in order for your plants to continue to look dark green and healthy and to put on blooms, you really need to fertilize them. When you look for a fertilizer, I want you to look for a fertilizer that has a content of like 20, 10, 20, or 8, 19, 8, 19. And without making this complicated, basically that's telling you how much nitrogen, phosphate, and phosphorus you're putting into it. So again, look for those numbers like 20, 10, 20. That right there is the best combination, or one close to it, for keeping your plants looking dark green and healthy, and for putting on a lot of blooms. Don't always necessarily go by a certain name brand. Now, fertilizing doesn't have to be a complicated thing either. You don't have to be worried about the chemical. That doesn't have to be something you stress about. What I would recommend, most people don't fertilize at all, so what I'm going to recommend to you is try to do it once a week for the best results for you. Most people won't do what I do. I do it every time I water, but that's me. I'm in the industry, and I do that to continue my plants looking at their best. People are always looking at my house saying, well, how does he take care of his plants since he owns a business? That's why I do it, because I want my plants to always look good and to last clear into the fall till it freezes. If you can do it once a week, you're doing very well. What I would recommend is, if you buy fertilizer and you buy it in a bag, immediately transfer it into some kind of container that has a seal-tight lid on it, and mark it. Mark that it is fertilizer. Keep it out of reach of children. It probably wouldn't kill them, but you don't want your children getting into it. It would make them very sick. So the reason we put it in a container like this is twofold. You can mark it, you can set it up high, and a lot of times here in Indiana, when the humidity gets up in the 70s and we get those 90-degree days, if you leave your fertilizer in a bag, you're going to come out some morning and it's going to be hard as concrete. You're going to have to break it up and try to get it back to its granular form before it will dissolve in your water. The second thing is, too, you want a fertilizer that is water soluble. You want it to dissolve in your water. This fertilizer that I use right here, I would recommend that you put 1 teaspoon of this fertilizer in a gallon of water. Again, we used our handy watering jug here. I would put 1 teaspoon right in here, and I'd pour the water in on top of it so it would mix it up as you were putting the water in the can. Again, you'd go through the same watering process that you did before, getting the nozzle down in the plant, not to pour it over the top and all over the place. So hopefully this will help you in your fertilization. Well, thank you for watching this video today. Hopefully we've been able to help you understand a little bit more about watering and about fertilization. We don't want it to be an intimidating thing or a scary thing. We want it to be something that you can do and feel good about doing, and also see your plants last a lot longer through the summer, and even up to what might freeze in November or October, depending on when the freeze comes. For all your plant needs, always remember L&M Gardens.